Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. My husband jammed a box into my hands and wouldn't meet my eyes. His knuckles were white, like he expected me to swing. Behind him, his mom leaned on our doorway with that calm smile. The kind that makes you feel guilty for breathing wrong. I'm just 31 and I froze with that box against my chest. Not because I was scared of the test. Because I was scared of what he already decided. You know that feeling when the verdict arrives before the trial. What is this? My voice came out thin. Mark's mouth opened then closed again. Linda lifted her chin like she was granting permission. Mark finally looked up and his eyes were flat. Just do it, he pointed at the box like it was a chore. I waited for the joke, the grin, anything. Nothing showed up. Linda's smile widened like she had been waiting for that line. I turned the box over once then twice. The words hit me like a shove. I felt heat rush up my neck and I hated that part. Because it made me look guilty before I even spoke. You think Evan isn't yours? I kept my tone steady. Mark's shoulders rose then dropped. He didn't deny it and that was the knife. Linda crossed her arms like she was protecting him from me. I'm not accusing you, Mark rubbed his face hard. That line made it worse, not better. It landed like a warning, not comfort. My hands started shaking and I curled my fingers tighter. I glanced past them to our son on the rug. Evan slapped a block and laughed at the sound. He looked up when he heard my voice get sharp. I swallowed the urge to scoop him up and run. Linda stepped forward, slow and confident. You've been so defensive lately, she watched my mouth, not my eyes. Mark nodded once like that proved something. I almost laughed because it was so twisted. Defensive about what? I kept my stare on Mark. He stared at the floor, then the wall, then anywhere else. That avoidance felt louder than shouting. It told me his mom had rehearsed him. I took one step toward Mark then stopped. He flinched like I was a threat. That flinch stuck under my ribs. Because I had never raised a hand to him, not once. Who put this in your head? My voice cracked on the last word. Linda answered with a soft sigh, like I was being dramatic. I'm trying to help my son. Her hand landed on his shoulder. Mark leaned into her touch like it was a lifeline. I stared at that hand. Not the gesture itself, but what it meant. She didn't comfort him like a mom. She anchored him like a handler. Help him by calling me a cheater. My laugh sounded wrong. Mark winced at the word cheater. Linda's eyes sharpened then softened again. She was good at that switch, almost surgical. Jess, Mark's voice came out low and careful. It sounded like he was talking to a stranger with a weapon. You know how my mom gets. He tried to smile then gave up. That line punched me harder than the kit. Because it wasn't an apology. It was a script and I could hear the coaching. And I realized he wanted me to play my part. I set the box on the counter, slow and controlled. My palm stuck to it like glue. Linda watched every movement like a hawk. Mark watched Linda watching me, and that was the sick part. You want a test? I pointed at Mark, not the box. Then you come with me and you do it right. Linda's lips pressed together for half a second. That tiny slip told me I found a nerve. Mark glanced at her before he answered. That glance was quick, but it was everything. A grown man asking permission without words. I felt something in me go cold. We can do it here. Linda stepped closer again. She reached for the box like she owned it. I snapped my hand over it first. Her fingers stopped inches from mine, then curled back. No, I kept my voice quiet, almost polite. Not with you hovering. Mark's eyes widened like I cursed at her. Linda's face didn't change, but the air did. Why are you making this a fight? Mark's jaw tightened. I stared at him and I could not find my husband. All I saw was a man bracing for his mom's disappointment. And I hated him for that just for a second. Evan squealed and crawled toward Mark's leg. Mark lifted his foot away like he didn't trust himself. Evan blinked, confused, and sat back hard. That small rejection made my chest ache. I scooped Evan up before Linda could comment. He grabbed my shirt and buried his face, warm and steady. I held him too tight, then eased up. Because I felt watched, judged, measured. Linda tilted her head at Evan like she was inspecting him. Look at his hair, she said it like evidence. I stared at her and my mouth went dry. Mark didn't shut it down, not even a little. "You're really doing this," I whispered mostly to Mark. He didn't answer me. He studied Evan's face like it was a puzzle. And I saw doubt take root right in front of me. I tried to keep my breathing even. I tried to keep my voice normal. But I heard myself get sharper anyway. Who started this? Mark's throat bobbed. He rubbed his thumb along the box edge, over and over. Linda leaned in, close enough to smell her shampoo. I only asked questions, her tone stayed sweet. I almost lost it right there. Because that is how she does everything. She plants a thought, then calls it concern. And suddenly, you are defending your entire life. Mark finally spoke and his voice shook. Mom saw something. I waited, staring him down. He couldn't hold my gaze for more than a second. Linda's smile came back slow and sure. Mark grabbed his phone and walked straight past me. He didn't even glance at Evan this time. Linda followed, almost shoulder to shoulder with him. I watched them disappear down the hall like a team. I shifted Evan onto my hip and kept my voice low. Mark, what did she see exactly? His reply came back without his face showing. Nothing, just stuff. That pause felt planned. Linda reappeared first, palms up like a mediator. You're upset, I get it, her tone stayed syrupy. I hated how she used calm as a weapon. Mark came behind her and he let her lead. Say it out loud, I pointed at Mark's chest. What are you claiming I did? His eyes darted toward his mom before mine. That quick check made my stomach twist. Linda answered for him like it was normal. She noticed timing didn't add up. I blinked hard, trying to keep my voice steady. What timing? I asked, and she didn't flinch. Mark lifted his hands like he was stopping a fight. Can we not do this around Evan? He used Evan's name like a shield. Linda nodded, and it felt like a win for her. I carried Evan into the bedroom and shut the door. He tugged my hair and babbled at my face. I kissed his forehead, then forced my hands to stop shaking. Because I heard them talking again, muffled and fast. When I walked back out, Mark was holding the package. Linda was pointing at the instruction sheet. He nodded on every beat like a metronome. I realized I wasn't in the conversation anymore. Let's go to a clinic, I kept it simple. Linda shook her head with fake pity. That's expensive and stressful, she brushed her sleeve like nothing. Mark's mouth tightened and he didn't argue with her. I tried a different angle, and I hate that I did. Mark, look at Evan's face. He glanced over, then looked away too fast. Like looking longer would cost him something. Linda stepped between us again, perfect timing. You're trying to distract him, her eyes stayed on mine. That accusation landed sharp, like I used Evan as bait. Mark's shoulders tensed and I saw him choose her. I went cold for a second, then burned right after. Stop talking like you know me. Linda gave a small sigh, like I was proving her point. Mark whispered, Jess please, and I almost snapped. Evan started fussing from the bedroom. Mark didn't move toward the sound. I did, and that difference felt massive. I picked Evan up and came back out anyway. Linda tilted her head toward the hallway. Maybe I should stay tonight. I stared at Mark, waiting for him to say no. He didn't, and my mouth went dry. Why would you stay? I forced a laugh. Linda's eyes widened like I insulted her. Because he's hurting, she nodded toward Mark. Mark didn't correct her, not even once. I set Evan down and kept my palms open. Mark, tell her to go home. He rubbed his forehead and exhaled hard. I just need peace tonight, and somehow that meant Linda. Linda walked to the kitchen like she belonged there. She started making calls without asking anyone. I heard her say tomorrow and first thing and results. Mark sat at the table and listened like a child. I stood behind Mark and lowered my voice. Are you really doing this with her here? He didn't turn around. I can't deal with your reactions, that one stung worse than yelling. My reactions, that phrase kept looping in my head. Like I was the problem for being hurt. Like betrayal is only valid if it's quiet. I swallowed hard and tasted something bitter. Linda returned with her phone in her hand. There's a lab that can process it fast. She slid a number across the table toward Mark. He reached for it without even reading it. I leaned over the table and blocked his hand. No shortcuts, my voice came out clipped. Linda's face stayed soft but her eyes hardened. Why are you scared of answers? She aimed that at me. Mark's head lifted fast at that line. His eyes narrowed like a door closing. I stared back and tried not to flinch. Because I knew she had been feeding him this script. Evan crawled toward Mark's knee and giggled. Mark scooted his leg back just a few inches. It was small, but it was brutal. Evan stopped and stared like he didn't understand. I picked Evan up before he could cry. I didn't want Linda getting a comment in first. Mark watched me like I was stealing evidence. That look made my throat tighten. You're treating him like a stranger. I kept my voice low. Mark stood up fast, chair scraping. Don't twist this, his words came out sharp. Linda moved in behind him like backup. I backed toward the hallway, holding Evan tight. Mark followed a step, then stopped himself. Linda touched his arm, gentle and possessive. And Mark stayed where she wanted him. That night he didn't come to our bed. I heard him settle on the couch, then go quiet. Linda's car stayed parked outside like a threat. I lay awake and listened for every small sound. Close to midnight, I heard murmurs in the living room. Not loud enough to catch every word. Enough to catch my name and timeline and proof. I stared at the ceiling and felt my face go hot. I got up and walked to the doorway in socks. Mark's phone screen lit his hands for a second. Linda sat too close, her head angled toward him. When I cleared my throat, they snapped apart. Mark stood up too fast like he got caught. Go to bed, his voice came out harsh. Linda watched me with that calm mask again. Like she was the adult and I was the mess. I live here, I kept my voice flat. Mark clenched his jaw and looked away. Linda tilted her head, almost amused. See, that one word was aimed at him, not me. I walked back to the bedroom and shut the door. Evan stirred, then settled against my arm. I stared at his little hands and felt my chest ache. Because I knew tomorrow would get worse. At some point Mark texted from the other room. One line only, like a legal notice. We do the test in the morning, no heart, no softness. I held the phone and felt something in me crack. I didn't reply right away, and that was my mistake. My silence gave Linda space to fill the gaps. I could almost hear her voice inside his head. And I knew I needed proof of what she was doing. I snatched his tablet off the couch and held my breath. My hands moved before my brain could argue. I hated myself for it, then I kept going anyway. Because I was done being the only one on trial. The lock screen popped up, then his Face ID failed. Of course it did because I was shaking. I tried again and forced my shoulders down. It opened and I felt sick with relief. I didn't scroll through photos or bank stuff. I went straight for messages like a coward with a plan. I typed her name into the search bar and hit enter. The screen filled up like a dam breaking. At first it looked like normal mother-son chatter. Little check-ins, little heart emojis, little guilt hooks. Then I saw the shift in tone, clean and strategic. It wasn't comfort anymore, it was steering. One text jumped out and my stomach turned. Don't let her control the process. I reread it 3 times, hoping I was misreading. He had replied with one word, okay. I scrolled up faster than I should have. My thumb slid and almost dropped the tablet. I caught it, then saw why she felt so bold. She had been planting this for days. There was a message with a screenshot attached. A lab website, a shipping label, a tracking number. I blinked hard, then zoomed in. Her name was on the sender line, not his. Another message followed right after. I talked to my contact, we can expedite. Contact, that word sat there like a loaded gun. Who has a contact for paternity tests? I kept scrolling and my pulse went loud. A photo of a sealed envelope sat in the thread. Her hand was in the frame, manicured and smug. I could almost hear her voice in that picture. Then I saw the line that made me feel dizzy. Worst case, we fix the sample. I stared until my eyes stung. Fix the sample like this was a stain, not a child. I heard the shower start in the bathroom. That meant he was distracted and she knew it. I saved the screenshots to a hidden folder, one by one. My finger hovered, then I sent copies to myself too. My phone buzzed and I nearly dropped everything. A text from him, short and cold. Mom's handling drop-off, don't make this messy. So that was the plan and I was late to it. I walked into the hallway and listened. Linda's voice floated from the kitchen, low and busy. She was on speaker with someone making arrangements. I heard pickup window and my skin crawled. I stepped in and she didn't even startle. She ended the call with one tap and smiled. Good morning, ready to be reasonable today. Her tone made reasonable sound like surrender. "Where's the kit?" I kept my voice level. Her eyes flicked toward the counter, then back to me. "Don't worry, it's all set up." Set up like I was a problem to manage. I reached for the box and pulled it close. She moved quicker than I expected, hand out, stopping me. "You shouldn't touch it, it could contaminate." That excuse landed too smooth, like she practiced it. I stared at her hand blocking mine. "You mean you shouldn't lose control?" Her smile held, but her jaw tightened once. And that tiny crack told me I hit something real. The bathroom door opened down the hall. Mark walked out, rubbing his hair, not looking at me. Linda shifted instantly into gentle mom mode. "Sweetheart, I made a schedule so you don't stress." He nodded and reached for the kit without thinking. I stepped between them just enough to force a pause. "No drop-off without me," my voice came out sharper. Mark looked annoyed, like I was ruining a chore. Linda gave a small laugh, airy and fake. "You're spiraling again," her eyes stayed on Mark. He flinched at the word again, like it fit me. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, not yet. I pulled my phone out and unlocked it. I didn't show him the screenshots right away. I watched his face while I chose the moment. Because timing mattered now, and I hated that. "Who's your mom's contact?" I asked Mark. He blinked, then looked at her like a reflex. Linda answered with a shrug. "Just someone who knows the process." "Name?" I kept the pressure steady. Linda's smile didn't move, but her eyes narrowed. Mark cleared his throat, then tried to change lanes. "Can we do this after we get results?" That dodge told me he didn't know everything. It also told me she kept him half-fed on purpose. I turned the tablet screen toward him. "Your mom already planned the results." His eyes landed on the tracking number first. He frowned, then looked up at her. "Linda jumped in fast, too fast. I ordered it to help you, that's all." I swiped to the next screenshot and held it there. "Don't let her control the process." Mark's face went still, like he got slapped. He stared at his own okay and swallowed hard. Linda stepped closer, voice soft, almost scolding. "You promised you'd stay calm." She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to him, and it worked. Mark looked at me like I had betrayed him. "Why are you snooping?" His voice sounded small. I almost laughed because the irony was ugly. His mom could move samples, but I couldn't read texts. I clicked to the line about fixing the sample. I didn't add commentary or emotion. I just let the words sit between us. Linda's smile finally slipped, and it was quick. "That's taken out of context." Her tone went flat. Mark stared at her now, really stared. He opened his mouth, then shut it. And for the first time, she looked uncertain. I pointed at the kit in his hands. "If she drops it off alone, you're not testing anything." Mark's grip tightened, then loosened. He looked torn, and I could see the fight in him. Linda's voice rose a notch, still controlled. "You're manipulating him with paranoia." I snapped my gaze to her and kept it cold. "You're manipulating him with paperwork." Mark exhaled hard and rubbed his eyes. He looked tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. Then he did something that shocked me. He set the kit down and locked his phone screen. Linda froze for half a second, then recovered. "Fine, all three of us can go." That offer was poison wrapped like a gift. She wanted front row access, not peace. I shook my head once. "No, me and you," I pointed at Mark. Linda's smile returned, thin and sharp. "And if he refuses, what then?" Mark didn't answer right away. He looked at the kit, then at our hallway. Like he was remembering who lived here with him. And I could feel the next choice coming like a storm. Mark grabbed his keys and moved like he was escaping a fire. I followed with Evan on my hip and my phone in hand. Linda stepped into our path with a tight little smile. "Good, I'll come too." Her certainty made my skin prickle. No, I didn't raise my voice, and that mattered. Mark hesitated, which told me everything I needed. Linda watched his face, waiting for her cue. He finally murmured, "Mom, not today," and she didn't blink. She pivoted fast, like she had backup plans stacked. "Then I'll take Evan while you two handle it." Her hand reached toward my son like she had rights. I turned my shoulder and shut that down without words. Mark opened his mouth, then stopped himself. He looked at Evan, then looked away again. That hurt, and I hate admitting how much it hurt. Linda caught the moment and leaned in, hungry. I walked Evan to the neighbor's porch and knocked hard. My neighbor opened the door and took one look at my face. I need 10 minutes, please. My voice sounded rough. She nodded fast and I didn't wait for questions. When I came back, Mark was at the car with his jaw clenched. Linda stood by the driveway with her arms folded. She wasn't blocking us, but she didn't have to. Her presence alone made Mark shrink, and I saw it. I slid into the passenger seat and locked my door. Mark got in and started the engine without looking over. Linda tapped the window with one fingernail. Mark didn't roll it down and her smile thinned. "You're making a mistake," her voice carried through glass. Mark stared straight ahead like he couldn't hear her. I held my phone low so she couldn't see my screen. She backed up slowly like she had time on her side. Mark pulled out too fast and clipped the curb. He swore under his breath, then swallowed it. I wanted to reach for his hand, but I didn't. Because comfort felt like permission in that moment. 2 blocks away, his phone started buzzing nonstop. He didn't answer, and the silence felt unnatural. He tossed the phone into the cup holder like it burned. Then he finally spoke. "What if she's right?" I stared at him and I almost laughed again. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. "You think I'd risk our whole life for what?" He didn't have an answer, and that was terrifying. He turned into a parking lot and braked hard. The clinic sign sat above the door like a dare. Mark stared at it like it could judge him. Then he whispered, "If this comes back bad, I'm done." Inside, a woman at the desk slid forms toward us. Mark reached for the pen, then stopped and looked at me. I could see him trying to be brave and failing. Linda's voice echoed in my head anyway like a ghost. I pulled out my phone and set it on the counter. "I need to report a possible tampering attempt." The receptionist blinked like she heard that too often. Mark turned his head fast, eyes wide. "Tampering." The receptionist lowered her voice and leaned closer. "Are you both the test subjects?" Her gaze moved between us. Mark nodded and his face tightened with embarrassment. She glanced toward the hallway, then asked, "Anyone else involved?" I didn't even hesitate, and that was new for me. "His mother ordered it, she has a tracking number." Mark flinched at the words like I stabbed his pride. The receptionist's expression changed, and she stood up. A supervisor came out with a calm face and sharp eyes. He asked for IDs, then asked for the kit. Mark held up the box like it weighed 50 pounds. The supervisor took it carefully, then paused like he noticed something. He pointed at a barcode sticker and frowned. "This was already registered." His voice stayed neutral. Mark blinked confused, then looked at me. I felt my stomach drop because I knew what that implied. "Registered by who?" Mark's question came out raw. The supervisor tapped a screen and didn't answer right away. He looked from Mark to me, then made a decision. "I can't share names, I can share times," and my throat tightened. He read a time stamp out loud, slow and clear. It was from earlier that morning, before we left home. Mark's face drained like someone pulled a plug. "Because his mom was still at our house when that happened, right?" Mark's voice cracked and I heard panic in it. "That's not possible, we never came here." The supervisor held up a hand, steady and firm. "Someone came, someone completed intake," and the air went thin. I opened my photo folder and showed the screenshots. I kept my finger on the line about fixing the sample. Mark stared at the screen, then at the supervisor. His breathing turned choppy, like his body finally caught up. The supervisor nodded once, like it confirmed a suspicion. He stepped away and spoke quietly into his headset. The receptionist started locking down paperwork behind the counter. And Mark whispered, "She did it, she actually did it," like a prayer. Then the front door chimed, and I knew before I looked. Linda walked in with a bright smile and a sealed envelope. She held it up like a trophy, like she was saving the day. Mark turned toward her and the look on his face scared me. Linda marched in, waving that envelope like a victory flag. Her heels clicked fast like she owned the hallway. Mark took one step toward her, then stopped mid-stride. The supervisor lifted a hand between them. "Stop." "There you are." Linda aimed her voice at Mark, not me. "I got it handled." She shook the envelope once, sharp and proud. Mark stared at it like it might bite him. And I realized she expected applause. The supervisor didn't reach for the envelope. He asked, "Ma'am, are you a test participant?" Linda's grin stayed glued on. "No, but I'm family," and she held it higher. "Then you can't submit anything here." The supervisor's tone stayed flat. Linda's eyes flicked to Mark for backup. Mark didn't move, and that silence hit her hard. Her grin twitched at the edges. She shifted into wounded mom mode in one breath. Mark, tell them I'm trying to protect you. Mark's throat worked like he was swallowing glass. He looked at me, then away, like he couldn't face either side. I stepped forward before my courage could fade. That envelope is part of the problem. Linda snapped her gaze to me, laser sharp. You're panicking because you know the truth, she fired back. Mark flinched at the word truth. His hand lifted like he might grab the envelope. Then he stopped himself again, fingers hovering in midair. That hesitation was new, and it mattered. The supervisor nodded toward a side office. Both of you with me, he pointed at Mark and me. Linda started to follow like it was automatic. The recep. Tiana stepped into her path and didn't budge. Linda's voice rose, still sugary on top. This is ridiculous, I paid for everything. The receptionist kept her expression neutral. Payment doesn't make you a patient, and Linda blinked. Mark exhaled and rubbed his palms together. He whispered, Mom, just wait outside. Linda's head tilted, almost offended by the request. Outside, like a stranger, her tone turned icy. Mark didn't answer her right away. He walked into the office with me, slow and heavy. The supervisor closed the door behind us. And the quiet inside felt like a trap. Mark paced one small line back and forth. His eyes stayed on the floor like it could save him. I wanted to yell at him for doubting me. I didn't, because I saw fear, not cruelty. The supervisor opened a folder and tapped one page. He explained chain of custody in short terms. Mark listened like each word was a hammer. Then the supervisor asked, did your mother ever have access to your sample? Mark's mouth opened and nothing came out. He dragged a hand down his face, slow and tired. I don't know, his voice sounded broken on purpose. Because admitting he knew would destroy him. I pulled up the screenshots again and held my phone out. I didn't plead or soften it. I just let Mark read what he avoided before. His eyes locked on the line about fixing anything, and he went rigid. He looked up fast and his voice came out hoarse. Is there video? The supervisor didn't hesitate, which scared me. Yes, he said, and Mark's breath stalled. The supervisor slid a tablet across the desk. A security clip loaded with a spinning icon. Mark leaned in like he might fall through the screen. And I held my hands together so hard my fingers hurt. The clip started and there she was. Linda stood at the counter earlier that morning. She smiled at the receptionist like she was a friend. Then she turned slightly and did something quick with her hands. Mark blinked like his brain refused it. He leaned closer, eyes wide and wet. What is she doing? His voice cracked hard. The supervisor paused the clip on the exact frame. Linda's hand held a swab packet, already opened. Her other hand reached toward a different bag on the counter. The supervisor pointed, calm and precise. She attempted a substitution, he said, and Mark made a small choking sound. Mark shoved back from the desk and stood too fast. The chair scraped loud in the tiny room. He pressed his palms to his eyes, then dropped them. His face looked empty, like someone cut the strings. I should have felt triumphant right then. Sincerely, I expected relief. Instead, I felt this ugly ache in my chest. Because this wasn't just proof, it was damage. Mark turned toward the door, then stopped. He looked at me like he needed permission to breathe. I'm sorry, his voice came out thin and raw. Then he added, I let her do this, and his shoulders sagged. The supervisor opened the office door again. He spoke to the receptionist in a low voice. I caught one word, security. Mark heard it too, and he flinched like a guilty kid. Linda's voice cut through the hallway, loud and offended. You can't keep me out, I'm his mother. The receptionist replied, steady and firm. Ma'am, you need to leave, and Linda laughed like it was cute. Mark stepped out and everything changed. Linda saw him and lifted the envelope again. There, tell them I'm allowed, she pushed. Mark didn't take it and her confidence wobbled. What did you do? Mark's voice was low and strange. Linda blinked fast, then recovered with a sweet face. I helped, that's what I did, she reached toward his arm. Mark stepped back and her hand grabbed air. Don't touch me, Mark's words landed heavy and final. Linda's eyes flashed, then narrowed. You're choosing her over your own mother. Mark stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. The supervisor stood beside Mark, not aggressive but present. Ma'am, we have footage of your actions. Linda's face froze, then she scoffed. That's edited, she snapped, and I felt my blood heat. Mark laughed once, sharp and ugly. Edited? He shook his head like he couldn't believe himself. He pointed at the envelope in her hand. Was that your plan too, to hand me lies in a neat package? Linda's jaw tightened and she changed tactics fast. Look at her, she's turning you against me. She pointed at me like I was the disease. Mark's eyes didn't follow her finger this time. He turned to the supervisor, voice shaking but steady. What happens now? The supervisor answered in clear steps, no drama. We document, we can involve police, and Linda's face finally shifted. Linda stepped forward like she might bolt past us. The receptionist moved first and blocked her path. Linda's hand clenched around that envelope so tight it crumpled. And I realized she could not stand losing control. Mark pulled out his phone with shaking fingers. He scrolled fast and hit a contact without looking up. I expected him to call his mom's number. He called my neighbor instead, and my throat tightened. Can you bring Evan to the car? Mark's voice trembled hard. Please, right now. He listened, eyes fixed on the floor. Then he whispered, thank you, like he didn't deserve kindness. Linda heard Evan's name and lunged toward Mark. What are you doing? Don't involve the baby. Mark raised his arm between them, protective and firm. You don't get to say his name like you own him, he snapped. Linda's face twisted in a way I'll never forget. Not rage exactly, more like possession. He's not yours, she threw the words like a grenade. And the hallway went dead silent. Mark didn't crumble this time. He didn't look at me for answers either. He looked straight at her and took a slow breath. You tried to steal the truth, he said, and Linda's eyes went hard. Security arrived and it got real fast. A uniformed guard positioned himself near the door. Linda started crying on cue, loud and dramatic. Then she turned it off mid-breath when no one rushed to comfort her. She pointed at me again, voice trembling on purpose. She trapped you, she cheated, I know it. Mark didn't even argue the accusation. He just said you're leaving, and the guard stepped closer. Linda clutched the envelope to her chest like it was her heart. Fine, I'll go, her tone turned venomous. Then she leaned in toward Mark and hissed, you'll regret this. Mark didn't flinch and that scared her. When she walked out, she looked over her shoulder once. Her face held that same certainty, just colder now. Like this was a pause, not an end. And my skin crawled because I knew she'd try again. The supervisor asked us to confirm statements in writing. Mark signed first, hand shaking hard. Then he slid the pen toward me without meeting my eyes. I signed too, and my name looked strange on the page. We walked outside and the air hit my face like a slap. Mark stood by the car like he didn't know where to put himself. My neighbor pulled up with Evan in her arms. Evan squealed and my eyes burned instantly. Mark stepped forward slow, like he was approaching a wild animal. Evan reached for him without hesitation, little hands open. Mark froze, then took him, careful and desperate. He pressed his face into Evan's shoulder and made a sound I'll never unhear. I'm sorry, Mark's words came muffled against Evan's shirt. I'm so sorry, he rocked slightly like he couldn't stop. I watched him and felt two feelings collide, love and anger. And neither one wanted to leave. He handed Evan to me with shaking arms. Then he turned his phone around and showed me the screen. He had blocked his mother's number. Right there in front of me, no speech, no bargaining. Mark looked up, eyes red and exhausted. We do a real test with the clinic with no one else. I nodded once because I couldn't trust my voice. And in that moment I realized something terrifying, we were not done rebuilding.